person is ready for it, because he is the board member with Santa Margarita Water District and the former mayor of City of Mission Viejo, Frank Urey.
No, it's a very easy act to follow because there's nothing more sacred than the introduction of elected officials at events like this. And I know there's only one question on everyone's mind. How quickly is he going to get through this? So what we're going to do, there's 88 board members for water districts here. So what we're going to do, when I get to those members, I'm going to call you individually. Please stand for 10 seconds of applause. We'll move through it quickly. Or when I mention your agency, just wave. Better? All right, we'll do that. So some people do deserve individual recognition. Senator Padilla, we can give Senator Padilla a hand. Thank you very much for coming. And of course, Congressman Correa, who's done a great job. I don't know if he's still here. And we do have some local folks from the 5th Supervisorial District in Orange County, Supervisor Katrina Foley. She's here. We also have from the 2nd District, Supervisor Vince Sarmiento is here. And our neighbor just over to the area, Honorable Kurt Hagman, the County Supervisor from the 4th District for San Bernardino. Thank you, Kurt, for being here. And I think one of the things that represents how broad this item is in terms of discussing water is how many elected officials we have here from city councils. So with that, we have a few people from city councils. Karina Quintanilla, Mayor of Palm Desert, she's here. The Mayor of Santa Ana, Valerie Amascua. I'm sure I mangled the name. Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Laguna Beach, Alex Runagi. That's here. Council member from Anaheim, we have Natalie Meeks. And from San Diego, Vivian Moreno, San Diego City. Bruce Whitaker here, council member of the City of Fullerton. I know I saw Bruce. And from my city in Mission Viejo, we have council member Bob Breach. All right, so now this is the part. I'm going to read your agency, give us a quick wave, and we can move this thing along. We have representatives from Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District, the Chino Basin Water Conservation District, the Coachella Valley Water District, the Desert Water Agency, East Orange County Water District, El Toro Water District, Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District, Inland Empire Utility Agency, Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, Mesa Water District, the Metropolitan Water District, I know we got some folks in there, Molten Miguel Water District, the Municipal Water District of Orange County, almost there, halfway through, Orange County Water District, the Orchard Dale Water District, the Rancho California Water District, San Diego County Water Authority, the San Gabriel Valley Water Company, the Santa Margarita Water District, please pause and show reverence, the South Coast Water District, the Trabuco Canyon Water District, West Basin Municipal Water District, Western Municipal Water District, and the Yorba Linda Water District. Give everybody a hand. Thank you very much.
That's the Fighting Irish in him. And for the more extended version of all the bios of all the speakers, it is in the QR code, which is at every single table. We're going digital. We're going very high tech. So instead of the paper agendas, we're doing digital. So next, I'd like to introduce our great supervisor from the 2nd District, Vicente Sarmiento. Before coming to the Board of Supervisors, he was with the Santa Ana City Council and also served on the Orange County Water District. So he came also from water experience and background and has really been a force, not just in Orange County, but in California, in building the very kind of partnership that we've heard from both Senator Padilla and Congressman Lou Correa. So with that, Supervisor Sarmiento.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it is very, very good to be with all of you in water. Let's make some noise for June Lopez, who is moderating us today. So I want to thank you all for all that you do in the water industry. Many of you have been doing this for years. This is a career-long path for you. For some of us as policymakers, we go in and out of the industry and issues. So I'm just going to give you a little bit about my water cred. I was the former president of the Orange County Water District and a former director. So let's give it up for OCWD. Do we have any members here from OCWD? And I presided over a time when we were going through our final expansion, which is now complete, and we are providing over 130 million gallons a day of treated wastewater. So that is a very, very good thing from where we started. So yeah, we are the world's largest treatment facility, so that's something to be proud of here in Orange County. We want to welcome all of you here to the county and thank you for your interest in spending this day with us. But also, you know, for me, I know that a lot was said about PFAS. So I presided over the board when PFAS was a very, very prominent problem that we were dealing with. And I want to thank everybody who's leaned in, all the retailers who helped address the problem. But more importantly, the Water District really did an incredible job in making sure that we worked our way out of it. And from what I understand, 100+ wells were impacted as a result of PFAS, and it looks like 40 of the wells are back online. And that was a cost of $1.8 billion, so it was not a small problem. So thank you, OCWD, for making sure you led the way to make sure we see our way out of this. But as people were talking about the groundwater replenishment system, which is the largest treatment facility, you know, I was sent to Congress to talk to one of the Senate subcommittees, and one of the first things that I talked about was this phrase that was used for wastewater treatment, which was toilet to tap. And so I want to be known for the person who changed it to showers to flowers. So that we got a real big kick out of that. It stuck. The senators loved it. So I think it was something that we finally accomplished to make sure that they realize it is an important step for us to see innovation to make sure that we work our way out of this. For me, as a supervisor, I sit on the Orange County Transportation Authority. I also sit on the Orange County Housing Finance Trust, the Commission to End Homelessness, and Cal Optum. And the reason why that's relevant is because we talk about not just trust among agencies, amongst policy leaders and subject matter experts, but it's also because we know that all these things affect one another. You know, one of the first exposures I had to just water contamination in our ground was when I visited the Delhi Neighborhood Association, which is where I grew up, and saw that there was a huge impact to an immigrant community. It was a very, one of the oldest neighborhoods in the county where you had braceros that used to work there, many people who were immigrant families, but you could smell a lot of the contaminants that were in the ground, and we had families that were living there, and it made me realize how important it was for all of us to work with one another to make sure we address these problems. And so remediation efforts were immediately started. We started calling attention to that, and now it's become a real hub for environmental justice advocacy. So I want to thank all of you who at one time worked with us to make sure that we called attention to those, because we realize that when it comes to whether it's contaminants in the ground, in our groundwater basin, or any air pollutants, it usually affects communities of color, working family communities. And I know it's great to have our senior senator who comes at it from a perspective of lived experience. So it was great to have Senator Padilla talk about. So I want to make sure that we also, talk about what we're going to be, what the panel experts are going to be talking about today, which is navigating the success through transportation, energy, and broadband sectors. So we have a lot of great panelists that are going to be joining us, not only from the public sector, but also from the private sector. And I want to have them join me up here, and if they can, come sit down to my left. So let's start with Ronald Iguchi, who is the chair of the Lifeline Advisory Panel. Let's make some noise for Ronald. Ronald. And my counterpart from the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors, Kurt Hagman. Kurt, come on up. Council member from the city of San Diego, can I have Vivian Moreno come join us up here as well? Thank you, Vivian, for coming up here. and from the LA County Public Works Director, Mark Pastrella. If Mark can come on up. And finally, the President and CEO from the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, Maria Salinas, if she can join us up here. So I want to thank all of you for being here, but I want to thank the panelists especially who are going to be talking about energy, transportation, broadband, because we know it affects all of us. And it affects some of us, some of our families who are struggling the most even more acutely. So I want to thank you all for all the information that you're going to be sharing with us today. I look forward to all of you listening to the panelists and invite you to ask yourself this question. How can these strategies help me serve the communities and the agencies that we're responsible for? And also, what are the lessons that we can learn to adapt in the water sector? So we know that we have a very, very challenging issue in front of us, but I think with all of us in the room who come from different perspectives, different agencies, different sectors, I know sharing that information together will make a big difference. So let me go ahead and turn it over to the moderator. The moderator for today is going to be Mr. Charles Wilson, who is the Executive Director and CEO of Southern California Water Coalition. So let's go ahead and introduce Charles.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. This particular part of the program really is to be one of those lessons learned, and we thought it would tee it up. Now, Congressman Correa left, but he had the adage about whiskey. And I just kind of want to know, as we sort of start off, as our part of our introduction, I'm going to start all the way at the end and we'll work down this way. When we start talking about water, are we supposed to now start to walk into meetings with legislators, regulators with whiskey shots? Is that going to help us? And what's your experience been with other utilities or other infrastructure, whether it's transportation, energy, telecommunications? There's lots of those kinds of things that have been part of our effort to build that backbone on which our communities really thrive upon. So I'm just curious, as part of an opening, sort of your experience and sort of how you view this, and from there we're going to speed date through and we're going to individually talk to you a little bit more. I'm going to dig in, and yes, Supervisor, I have secrets, so look forward to that.
Great. I'm happy to jump in. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Salinas, President and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. We're a regional chamber, been around for 136 years. I've been in this role for 6, and I consider it a tremendous honor to do that. I think your question and what you're looking for, and definitely what the congressman was saying, is for us, one of the things that I think is so important is the word collaboration. When I think of walking into the room with our elected officials and whatever the issue is, we know that what really comes across is how we partner, how we bring different voices to the table. And the diversity of those voices, whether it's transportation or water, is so meaningful and so important when we're trying to get a message across. I've seen that happen with our transportation sector. I'm part of a coalition called Mobility 21. When I see our public agencies partnering with the private sector and highlighting issues, I think that's one of the greatest things that we can demonstrate, that we can work together and bring the different voices to the table.
Very good, thanks. Mark, I know this is a big passion for you within LA County. So your experience sort of kind of everything around water, but what lessons have you come up with?
Well, thank you, and thank you to WINS for having me here. I'm here representing the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Horvath sends her best wishes to everyone, wanted to be here today, and had me sit in. So I'm up here with these elected officials. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I always start my water experience after 37 years is that the problem with water, as we know, is the governance. And I know there's a lot of governors in the room, elected officials in the room. Governance has become the thing that we're really trying to tackle in Los Angeles County. And one of the things that the bureaucracy has done is get together on a large scale under a moniker that we created together called Infrastructure LA. And Infrastructure LA is sort of a brainchild of mine, along with those of you who know Marty Adams from Water and Power, as well as Stephanie Wiggins from CEO of Metro, as well as our county sanitation district and a number of the other large cities in the area, including the IOUs, SCE, and others are members of this entity that we created, and I mention it because it's a working group of people with one governance area in mind. That's the County of Los Angeles at large, attempting to collaborate across all sectors. You mentioned transportation sector. Not only that sector, energy, transportation, water, solid waste, looking at the greater good and prioritization of the investments in LA County and doing that in a collaborative way, believe it or not, trying to prioritize the investments that we're making together while honoring each other's needs. And it's a difficult, you can imagine, for instance, in the water sector, there are 200 water retailers in Los Angeles County. We only mentioned a few of them in here. There are actually more than a few. Our agency represents the third largest water agency, Los Angeles County Waterworks District, and that district alone serves more than 250,000 people on an annual basis. So you can imagine LA, if we can do it in LA, collaborating over that large group of sector of governance to come back with a better outcome for our county, delivering safe, clean, and reliable and affordable water for all. I think all the counties can do that. And I think wind represents this idea that Southern California could work together to prioritize, as you heard our great senator say, and he didn't quite say it, I was hoping he would say, I wish you guys would come in with one prioritization or one list that what is the most important things to do. So what we're looking to do in LA County is just that, collaborate. We currently adopted the county water plan. I would suggest that every county consider adopting a water plan that sets the agenda for the county board of supervisors on water. And this recently LA County adopted under the leadership of Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, again, gathering all the water interests in LA County, working together to put together an agenda, a priority agenda for Los Angeles County and its 88 cities.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman, there's nothing happening in San Diego, right? It's all
Nothing,
easy.
no. And I'm usually on the other side of the spectrum, right, where folks are coming and trying to pitch projects or trying to pitch initiatives. And one of the things that I would say, Vivian Moreno from the city of San Diego, I had a really great HR director one time tell me, you listen to the people who could hire and fire you. And in my case, that's my constituency. So if you come in and tell me how my constituency is gonna be impacted, I'm listening. I wanna hear, especially on the big projects that it doesn't seem like my constituency will be impacted, but when you get down to the granular level and explain that to an elected official, I think it makes the project just go a little deeper, right? And my ears are perked when they start bringing figures and numbers about how it will impact my district. So that's a little bit of tidbit that I would hand over.
Great, thank you. Supervisor, fastest growing region in the state of California?
Well, I have a few different hats too. I'm also the president of SCAG, so I got to represent all of Southern California right now. But I think a lot of what you heard, the collaboration, the master planning, and being on the other side when I was a state legislator, to be able to serve more than one jurisdiction with an ask, that's always tempting for us because I only got so much money or so much earmark capability for our Congress. How do we serve the most amount of biggest bang for your dollar because you're helping? We also do a lot in San Bernardino County with self-help. So for our transportation, we're doing our sales tax. We help in getting those plans done. And before you ask for the money, the prep work, because also the electeds want to see a return on their investment quickly where they can come out to ribbon cutting sometime sooner.
Ron, a very different perspective, but kind of share sort of the success stories and things that maybe our water guys might learn from.
All right, well, thank you, Charlie. But let me first say, this is my first meeting, or at least first attending this meeting. And this is really a big deal. Usually in meetings I go to, they don't wear ties. Sometimes they don't even wear shirts. So I think that I'm really honored to be here. So the perspective that I'm coming from today is infrastructure. In fact, let me ask you, how many of you know when I say lifelines, what I mean? Lifelines. Okay, not many. Well, lifelines, are our infrastructure, our utilities, transportation, that power our different cities. And in fact, let me ask another question. How many of you were here either during the 1971 San Fernando earthquake or the 1994 Northridge earthquake? Okay. Well, during those two events, one of the major sort of outcomes was that our lifelines were severely damaged, very disrupted, virtually every lifeline, water, wastewater, electric power, transportation, and so forth. And those events really kind of spurred, not only our interests, but the nation's interests, and internationally in trying to do things to better mitigate these systems against these sort of natural disasters. And the reason I'm here, and thank you, June Lopez, for inviting me, is that the National Institute of Building Sciences, NIBS, has started a new national initiative which is focused on infrastructure systems and to try and develop a stronger public-private partnership among a lot of organizations nationally, and in fact there's a lot of federal support from the different agencies to try and push the notion that we need to do more. We need to have bigger investments for our infrastructure systems so that we can better respond during these natural disasters. And Senator Padilla, who talked about investments, I think it's very important to realize that it's not only to make sure that we have safe, reliable systems, but during events like earthquakes, we need to make sure that they actually survive. And there have been studies that show, for example, for every dollar that you spend in trying to mitigate or design against these natural disasters, you're saving $4 in the future in avoided losses. And those are the sorts of numbers I think we need to very widely make known so that people begin to understand that these investments are critical so that our infrastructure survives in these sort of events.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to kind of dig in a little bit, and Supervisor, I'm going to start with you because frankly, you've served at virtually every level of government. So you've been at the city level and had to go look for funding for your community for infrastructure. You've served in the state legislature, which, by the way, I was digging up some dirt, and responsible for the Ronald Reagan statue in Sacramento. Now, there's no truth that you also modeled for that, correct?
No, but I do have a funny story about it some other time.
Okay. So I guess the question now, having gone local up to the state where you've got lots of interests, as you described in your opening remarks, now back down to local government in an area that is still one of the most rapidly growing and opportunities in need of infrastructure. Dig in for me a little bit. Who really, in your book, does a really good job articulating, coalescing, making the environmental argument? And what is it that seemed to make the difference when you had to sort that priority out from all of those other folks that were coming in with needs?
Well, as a legislator, first of all, you have a short attention span because you have your staff scheduling for meetings every 20 minutes for somebody else. So you need to make your point quickly. And those who did their homework beforehand and say, here, for this, you get this, and then follow up like Alex was saying earlier, that you could come out and show the success stories that you could take part of. I think that was some of the key parts that I looked for back in legislative days. I remember I was on the wrong side of the aisle to actually give away too much money, so I had to work with my colleagues to get that done. But there was, the story behind the project you're asking for. If you think about, if you're going out for road improvements, you want a bridge, how many tens of thousands of people are asking for the same money for another bridge in some other community. So what makes yours unique and different, and why is it more important? The history, hey, we had 2 people die off this bridge, or this is the fastest growth area that we need for goods movement, and this is why this investment is going to return in this in so much time. What's the background behind the project besides just saying, hey, I need $6 million to fix this?
Okay. Mark, I'm going to dig in for you as well, because the concept that you came up with, this infrastructure LA, I mean, for those that are not familiar in the room, I mean, that is truly unique, right? And I remember when you were sworn in for your position, and as they were going through the litany of responsibilities and the number of people, and what LA County really saddles public works with is well beyond your normal public works. You're having to sort out good news in LA County, it's really big and really diverse. Bad news, LA County is really big and really diverse. And so this concept of infrastructure LA, what was it that gave birth to that? And were there other sort of utility issues that kind of helped you formulate that we're now able to apply to water?
Yeah, I can give the simple answer to that. I mean, elected officials were so disorganized from LA County about what they were asking for, or what they wanted from the federal government, from the state government, and they were competing constantly with the 88 cities in LA County. For 20 years I've been advocating for LA County on the infrastructure side in my past roles and my current role. And so each time we would show up, we'd just see, the results of this dysfunctional prioritization. And so also, and more importantly, deeper, Charlie, is being a long-time practitioner in infrastructure, working through the department as an engineer and all the way to become the director of the largest public works agency in the United States, you get to see the poor outcomes of the lack of investment or poor or dumb investments. I'm just going to put it there, because of in its impact on the communities that we serve. So for instance, in LA County, there are still 20 Flint, Michigans going on. There are actually, we talk about the Central Valley having water problems. There are underserved, poorly maintained, highly polluted water quality districts in LA County, not to be named here today, but we know specifically of those districts, and we're in this megalopolis where that should not be happening, but people don't understand it. So the driver was, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then just frankly, competing with the transportation sector, frankly. The transportation sector just in LA, he just eats up all of the federal investment. And so it's been very, very difficult. And I can remember going to President Obama, first time I ever met him, and I can't believe I said this, but I said, would you please say water? That's the first thing I said because I was such a wonk on water at the time. And so there it is again is, trying to prepare an agenda for the Board of Supervisors whose job is to oversee 10 million people that is informed by the lack of equity and informed by the lack of investments, and then prioritize with the most effective way. So getting the other agencies and cities to sit together and talk about how it's not a zero-sum game, but it's actually by working together because of our interconnectivity, especially in water. And people want to do the right thing. So it's just once we brought that forum together, we have full excitement about it. And the success story, I have numbers, but I'm not going to go through them, of the success we have had already, for instance, on the BIL, is outstanding in terms of what we've been able to achieve in terms of investments through the BIL because of the collaboration.
So, Councilwoman, I'll come back to you again. We sort of half joke, right? San Diego, you're sort of down there in the corner, it's paradise, you're just sort of, everybody just flocks to you. But I know even through things like Sandag and SCAG, right, set up specifically for transportation, funding, and it's a full-blown government institution, the city and the county and all the cities are part of. So what is the success of a Sandag? What is the success, and how do you see something like the city involving themselves? Where has that been, successful or effective? Do we need to be looking at those kinds of structures for water? Not that I would ever want to recommend, Mr. Pastrella, another layer of bureaucracy in the water business, but is that the key to it? Because you've got these regional pockets that are able to go after things, or is there something else that we should be learning from?
Well, I would say that we don't get enough. That would be my opinion. I have the
Is that because Kurt's taking it here to LA and
I know he's eating our lunch, and I'm making sure that we have the lobbyist and the right representation in Sacramento. But sitting on the Sandag board, I think one of the strongest suits that we've had is, for the lack of a better term, collaboration. A really good working relationship with Caltrans, for instance. We actually just hired our director, our CEO of Sandag that we got from Caltrans. But when you look at Otay Mesa East and the great work that has been done with that new border crossing that Sandag has been working on, and the really millions of dollars that we've generated through state and federal grants, I think a big part of it is, once again, educating the decision makers in Sacramento as well as in DC to really understand the impact of these projects. So, for instance, for folks sitting here, I say Otay Mesa, and you kind of look at me like, what is Otay Mesa for those who haven't crossed the border? Well, it's the second most important commercial crossing of the United States of America. $50 billion of commerce goes through Otay Mesa. So if that, Otay Mesa proper, I often joke, I'm going to get political here, but Trump got two things right. JFK Airport is a dump, and putting $120 million into the Otay Mesa modernization project, the actual one that's sitting there right now, not Otay Mesa East. And so it really speaks volumes to the great work that we're doing at Sandag. I think some folks north, in the northern part of the county, some of the representatives that are in this room would probably argue that we probably should focus a little bit more on expanding freeways, something that the state of California won't allow or will allow, but making it very, very difficult. But the collaboration, once again, I think is key in having key stakeholders know the projects, and honestly using those projects. I'll just add a little tidbit. We were instrumental in the city of San Diego with getting $22.7 million of CTC funding for a little agricultural road called La Media Road, which is, there's 3,400 semi-trucks that go down this agricultural road. When I asked our engineers from the city of San Diego came to me to talk about a bridge, and they were going to apply for funding for, apparently engineers really love bridges. And I begged this man to please apply to trade corridor funds for La Media Road. I begged, and it was one of my first actions that I did as a council member. The gentleman applied, and guess what? We got $22.7 million for La Media, little agricultural road that really is the backbone of $50 billion of commerce. We didn't get the bridge money. We got it afterwards, I think 3 years later. And really, when I contacted the CTC, I met with executive directors, I met with a few board members so they could understand what La Media Road meant. The day that they were going to do the vote on this expansion of this agricultural road, the environmentalists descended upon this actual item, and they said, no more road expansions. And as a Democrat, I said, I get it, but not this one. Just not this one. And they wanted me to fly up there, and I said, you know what? No. I've already educated the executive director and some commissioners. They know what this project is. This is going to pass. And it did pass the first shot. And I think that goes to speak to just really educating decision makers on how this, once again, I say La Media and you guys, you don't think about it. Well, this is a huge road that's going to impact the whole, our biggest trading partner, right, which is Mexico, California's biggest trading partner. So it's really, a lot of it is also education and stepping, as elected officials, stepping out of our boundaries and saying, I do need to talk to that executive director. And just so you guys know, the deputy directors actually know more than the directors. Sorry, directors out there. So if they send you to a deputy director, they'll tell you as I say, they'll tell you the chisme. They'll tell you the real deal, so.
All right, so what I just heard from there, Frank, when you're doing introductions, what you forgot to get was the staff that made all the electeds look really good as we're doing this and do the staff work. So, okay, so what I'm hearing then, Maria, how effective is begging for the LA Chamber of Commerce?
Did you say begging?
Begging.
I'll interpret that in terms of supporting initiatives, right?
Well, you have this unique perspective now as well. Okay, so LA as an entity, right, you're hosting the Olympics on the near-term horizon. You've got World Cup coming. You've got world-class events that are being brought to a specific urban region. And they're, like I raised with the LA County, it's a really diverse, and there's a lot of needs in the city of Los Angeles. But speaking on behalf of the business community, bringing that, how do you kind of cut through the prioritization? Is begging part of the program? So far I've got whiskey and I've got begging, and I'm not afraid to use both.
I think we're at a very important time today. The torch is about to get passed to Los Angeles, and once that happens on August 13th, all eyes are going to be in the entire region. So for us, it's an incredibly high priority to make sure that every sector understands what is needed. And I'm not so sure that that is clear today. There's still a lot of questions from individual, whether it's infrastructures, different industry sectors, that are still wondering what is their role, or what do they need to get done? Or they might know what they need to get done, but they need more information to get done on time. So for the chamber, that's an incredibly big priority for us to ensure that we lean in, that we are working with the City of Los Angeles. The City of Los Angeles is the one that has put up that guarantee for the games. So there's a lot at stake here, and I really believe that the Chamber could play a very important role, and we're already working with our business partners to make sure that we're standing up the right infrastructure, even within the Chamber organization, so that we can be talking to LA County, but not just LA County. We know that these games are going to impact the entire region outside of the City of Los Angeles, outside of LA County.
Got it. All right, so I'm just building my list. So I've got begging, I've got whiskey, international sporting events. I'm wondering in Orange County sanitation if we can turn that into a water polo training facility. Yeah. As part of the, okay, so I'm just building as we go here. So Ron, you're the only one so far that in your opening remarks talked about making the economic either prosperity and or consequence. Is that part of helping to articulate? I mean, how much of that has been successful in helping to bring the priorities to, I mean, let's face it, infrastructure is usually out of sight, out of mind, and until the water's not on, the energy doesn't come in, or I can't get the bus or the train, right? So making the argument even of this will mean X jobs, X economic development opportunity, what does this mean to the region? Is that the most effective tool?
Charlie, I think that is really the challenge. I think people understand and realize, when there's a disaster and your power is shut off or there's no water, I mean, it's a pretty serious, situation. But we need to look, towards the future. We need to think about, what sort of things we can do to ensure that these sorts of things, don't happen. And I think the biggest problem that we have is maybe we don't fully understand or articulate, to not only stakeholders and the public, how complicated, how complex this whole process is. For example, you think about a water system, it's made up of tanks, pipelines, and so forth, a lot of different components. But when you think about what you need to make that run, you need power systems. If there are repairs that need to be made, you need transportation systems. And this interconnectedness, I think, is something that's becoming, maybe a little bit more clear as we see these sort of mega disasters and so forth. But what we don't have is we don't have sort of standard ways of measuring the metrics needed to measure performance. And, even if we had that, we don't have the sorts of tools, to be able to give to practitioners, to the utilities, where they can begin to forecast out and look at, what could be the effects that could happen to their city. If there were, maybe a very large disaster, and people talk about community resilience. Community resilience is built on things like, operationally functioning lifeline and infrastructure systems. And I just think that we're beginning to understand that, that there are a lot of things that need to be in place that are not there. And this is the reason why this national initiative, the Lifeline Infrastructure Hub, that is being pushed forward by NIBS is so important, because the sorts of participants, that are needed to make this move forward are the public-private, entities. And I think that everybody, needs to understand what the actual benefits are, what the benefits are of moving forward these partnerships, so that we can begin to, to really deal with the sorts of things that happened during the Northridge earthquake, the San Bernardino earthquake, that they don't happen because of a fire, because of a flood. It's a very multi-hazard situation now, and I think that we need to begin to recognize that and deal with that. And then you've got also things like climate change. How does that change, your perspective on what needs to be done? These are all things that need to be be evaluated.
Mark, I'm coming back to you on this, because this issue, right, it's easy when the front page of the LA Times is screaming, hey, we have this problem. This is happening on this system. How do you get to that place where you're doing forecasting and get people to understand that if you don't make this investment, here's the consequence? And then the second piece to it, because you went through this with Measure W, when we start talking about these things, it means more money. It means more rates. It means fare box. It means property tax. And we all know what we don't want more of, but how do I get over that hump into the future?
Thanks. And my background, I'm a civil engineer by training and licensed civil engineer. And in the civil engineering world, the industry in general has known for the longest time that infrastructure just isn't sexy, right? It's a hard thing to sell to people. And, you know, people ask me a lot of times, like, how do you deal with an elected official who has a term limit and their staff who have term limits too with them? You know, for us engineers, and I'm glad that there's an engineer in society in politics. I know our senator, it's fantastic he's there because, as he said, they're problem solvers, and the problems that we're solving are problems that are long range, as just described, and they have devastating impacts if not addressed now. And so you're asking people to pay something into something now that would take care of something in the future. That's a sustainability, definition of sustainability. So what we see, climate, we see an absolute threat. It's actually been drawn, we can see, we're seeing the effects of climate change in our weather system. As a hydrologist, you know, a professional hydrologist, I can tell you the climate in LA County has most definitely changed. We're heating up. We're seeing more intense rainstorms with fewer storms with more intensity. Same amount of water. This has a direct impact on the way we conserve water, how we can hold water, what looks like the future. So how do we do that? We are developing more and more tools, which is good news in our digital era, and the sharing of digital information. Again, this collaborative that I've formed up and working with the other agencies, we're not only sharing, like getting along, but we're like actually sharing the data with each other and developing models with machine learning as well as AI involved to help make better decisions about where things go. We've been talking for a long time about the burdens of not doing something. But also, what was just mentioned is like, what's the benefit of doing something? And then who ends up with those benefits becomes easier to describe once we have better models about what the future looks like. But let me be clear, and I think all the water people here know it already, we don't have time to be modeling and planning. We actually are in the crisis now. Just because we had some rain last year and the year before, let me tell you, we are just another series of drought cycle away, and it's coming. To be right back where we were at dead pool in our dams, and we were doing all these different crazy things. And we can't plan like that as human beings. That slow deterioration of our quality of life is being accelerated. It's being accelerated. So it goes back to, I've heard everyone saying, like visually, one of the things I've been working on is like data visualization, like visually explaining to constituent, to ratepayers, to elected officials, what good looks like and what good doesn't look like if we don't make the investments we're making now. So we've had better luck because of that, Charlie, but it's something that as the engineering community needs to do, we need to get better about communicating the risk that we cannot reduce. We cannot reduce. Certain risk will always be with us, and that self-sufficiency is another part of it, is like being honest as the engineering community, as the water industry, that we cannot solve all of the issues that are coming at us, but in fact we need the community's support in solving those problems, strengthening their resilience, but also having them invest in resiliency. So this is, the huge challenge, and it cannot be done by one agency, and that again goes back to the need to collaborate at all levels of science and all levels of government to draw the right picture so that people will make that investment, including private sector. I love the fact that you're bringing
Charlie,
private
can I jump in there? Because I was going to say,
please.
I think the private sector could be very helpful in that regard. When you think of Los Angeles and the region, we're always known for being the innovators and the creators, and it's no different in the water industry. And I'm always, just incredibly motivated when I see companies and entrepreneurs that are trying to solve problems as well with new technologies or new innovative ideas. And that is growing and being fostered here throughout the region. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity to tap into that entrepreneurship and creativity that's here in the region.
I love that point that you're raising, because I was kind of going to go there of, so far we're talking almost entirely upon public agency project development. We've not yet mentioned the famous private-public partnership, which we talk about a lot in some cases, not a lot of delivery, at least within California. Why is that? Is that helpful, or is it just something we're sort of bound up. Is that a bureaucracy issue?
Well,
why not more of that?
But let me use the transportation industry as an example, because I think that's the one that I always refer to as probably the one that has the broadest regional impact that I see. And I think it goes back even to what you were asking earlier, like I wish we had one or two issues that we'd be advocating for. In the transportation sector, and I'm part of Mobility 21, and I know several in here are familiar with that organization, but when you have the public sector leaders in the same room with private sector leaders, with project management firms alike that care about that industry, it's easier to push forward on advocating for something. Next week, I'll be in Washington, D.C. with the transportation sector, and we have 3 priority items. Imagine that, 5 counties being able to come together. So I think it's an opportunity to do more, to be part of the engagement process of not only, what are the new ideas, but how can we work together so that we're helping advocate for each other. We go to Washington, D.C., and I love it that we go with a variety of industries, that we can walk into, whoever we're meeting with, and we can say we represent water, transportation, education, small business. I think that's what elected officials can appreciate, hearing the holistic impact of their constituency or their locations where they're at.
I was going to ask an entirely different question of Supervisor, but I have to go off of that because it reminds me then San Bernardino County has Brightline. And got authorizations, got money, it's got right-of-way, and while it's not under construction, there's certainly a great deal of hope that that kind of project is going to be very successful, juxtaposed to a public project that loves to get criticized about its progress.
Well, I actually went to the groundbreaking for the first station a couple weeks ago in Vegas, and so we did get a couple, $2-3 billion from the federal government for that, and I'm proud to announce that 3 or 4 years running, San Bernardino County has been the most innovative county in North America from NACO. And to brag one more time, for the first time in decades, I got more earmarks than LA County did for San Bernardino County this year. So we're firing in all cylinders right now.
That seems like he's going to have to talk to his lobbyists now.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we love the technology, we love the innovation, and what I think you heard from Lou and Alex is to be innovative, to be out in front. We had the first zero-emission passenger rail, which is our Redland Rail Lines. We have the first tunnel we're going to put underneath from Rancho Cucamonga to Ontario Airport, using Boring Company. And so all these innovations, they're sexy projects. It's hard for you guys to compete for fixing water lines or sewer lines when there's those transportation projects that seem like it. But I think what the common theme was, just like under SCAG, we have transportation, we have housing, we have regional planning. It's the largest metropolitan planning organization in the world. That comes with clout and weight when you go with your list of 2 or 3 things to the federal government and say, this is our priorities.
All right, so now I'm picking up. I got tequila, I got begging, I got sexing it up, but I'm gonna tone it down just a bit and say we're gonna zhuzh it up a bit to try to make our projects a bit more sexy. So the question I was gonna ask the supervisor, Councilwoman, I'm gonna ask of you, because you mentioned as part of this in your opening statement the importance of the constituency that you serve and that utilize the service. And so I'm going to draw upon a very real experience we had this week, where with Adon Ortega and the Metropolitan Water District, we took a full delegation, North, South, Central Valley, business, labor, social justice, water agencies, all sitting around the table, 15 meetings with legislators and or critical staff specifically to articulate why we thought capital investment in water systems were important within a potential climate resiliency bond. Take all the politics and all the other things going on. And as we sat in that room and we went around the table, one of the great lessons that I took away was the people they heard from, the eyes really opened, were those that used the service. The businesses that could make the economic argument. The labor guys that could say, these are my jobs. This is how we elevate our community. The social justice advocates to say, you can't make my constituency conserve anymore. We don't have yards. We're talking about clean drinking water. How important is broadening the tent and collaborating with the communities that we serve. I'd like to say the non-water voices in going and being able to articulate the need with legislators and staff.
Thank you for the question, because when the Congress member spoke about, I believe it was him that spoke about trust, I think that has been lost in a lot of the United States of America. And we as elected officials, I think, have to work harder with having the trust of our constituency. Because if I go to my constituency and I say, hey, we're gonna raise rates, and by the way, I'm gonna raise rates that my predecessor was too afraid to do for 30 years, right?
But it got them reelected for 30 years.
It got them reelected for 30 years, a bunch of campaign money, but the reality is that we have a crumbling system. And I think, in San Diego, that goes without saying. LA, I can only imagine. And so that trust, I think, is really important. So holding our elected officials accountable so that when we do go to our taxpayers and we say, hey, we're about to raise this, that they look at us and that they say, absolutely. I see it. I obviously open the faucet and water comes out. And that you're not paying millions of dollars on a building that isn't utilized. Because they'll find money. I'm speaking about 101 Ash in the city of San Diego, where we paid $128 million on a building that isn't even used at this date. How can we go to I voted no, by the way, but how can we go to our taxpayers and tell them, hey, we're gonna spend your money right. We're gonna put your money in infrastructure. And I will say, we in my region in Otay Mesa, we have one of the most advanced, enhanced infrastructure financing districts. I happen to chair. It basically means that the tax increment in Otay Mesa stays in Otay Mesa. It doesn't go to the city of San Diego. And we had Measure O a few years ago that won by, I think, over 65%. So we did have the trust of our constituency. And so now what we're having is we've built the infrastructure with the streets and the parks. But now we have developers coming to us saying, hey, Vivian, that 5,000 unit project that we want to build, that's not going to be able to get done unless we have the EIFD give some money for the not so sexy, as people say, right, not so sexy infrastructure. So I think trust is the key. To be honest, I think trust is absolutely the key, unless you're some fantastic campaigner that will just, flip it around and figure it out. But we need trusted messengers. And I think those are, sorry to say, but those are becoming really few and far in between, because people are not seeing the fruit of their hard-earned money that they put into the government come back to them. And that's what we need to start, in the infrastructure for the cities, the streets, the sidewalks, the lights, even just fixing a city light. Those are the types of things before we go to our constituency and talk about rates being raised. Right. We need to, bring home the bacon, as they say.
Well, Mark, this kind of comes back to you again on Measure W and what you were able to accomplish in LA County on stormwater. Very rare that you're going to get a property tax increase to be able to fund projected need. And then the structure that you laid out there. So the secret then in getting that passed was you had a pretty broad coalition of folks that were able to speak to, and not just decision makers at the Board of Supervisors, but really the electorate in LA County. So how does because I'm very sensitive to this as well after having, again, done our Sacramento trip, water agencies don't elect anybody. The folks that have to make the decision, right, are self-taxing and are expecting things to be delivered. So I guess the question, having then passed the tax, having great plans and sort of projecting out the need, you've got a very elaborate process, but how important then is it to deliver on projects so the public sees, to the senator's admonition, the public sees, I'm getting something from my money. I'm not just being asked for more and seeing the problem either continue or exacerbate.
I think we're all saying the same thing. Trust not only within ourselves, but trust with the business sector, the average citizen, I think one of the issues for our agency, because there are so many of our agencies, I'm talking about the water sector now, is that when one agency fails, it brings the whole sector down. And so there's this investment in all of us that will help with that. So it's one thing I wanted to touch on is like, we don't just shine up our district. If we just shine up our district, we still can fail because the neighboring district is failing. And the neighboring district will get the news. And then that whole narrative will be just, water districts are a problem. And I'm not paying them water, and Metropolitan has worked on this very closely with us. Metropolitan Messages, they put out a message of there's a problem, everybody listens. But it only takes one small water agency serving brown water loaded with magnesium to cause absolute distrust. So those of us that are maybe more equipped and more able to succeed, we have to look to share and to collaborate across not only across these districts and lift them all. Counties know this because what happens, counties know that where do the failing districts go? They go to the county. This is why I'm the third largest water district in LA County, because of failing water districts get turned over to us. So we believe in the investment up front rather than just pragmatically. We don't want to become the largest water district in the county. So pragmatically, we are like investing and want the other larger agencies and also their constituents and businesses to invest across all of LA County on those priorities. But that is all to preserve trust. That's all to preserve trust, because without trust, you can't do any big project whatsoever. It took me 7 years to convince. I happen to also be the chief of Los Angeles County Flood Control District. We own 14 major dams. Those dams produce 1/3 of the drinking water supply for LA County every year. The reservoirs have to be cleaned. It's part of the maintenance regime. We had a reservoir that filled up with sediment after one of the most major fires we ever had. We went to go clean the reservoir. We were told absolutely no. What was the problem in general terms? We don't trust you. It's been 30 years and now you're doing it. It took 7 years and a lot of sleepless nights for me as the chief of the flood control district, worrying that we were going to have another event because we were going to lose control of our valves. And we were even showing people, you're going to die. There's going to be roads destroyed. The highways are going to be destroyed. And despite that, because of the lack of trust, I could not move one grain of sand. It took 7 years to build the trust, and it took 3 to clear the reservoir. We're cleared. It's Devil's Gate Dam, everybody. You're wondering, Pasadena. So it's trust is a basic theme, I would say. It's why our agency's vision is to be the most trusted public agency in the region. We know without that trust, we cannot do big things for people who are in need.
Well, this may be the perfect way. We're 5 minutes out. So for the close, I'm going to start Ron on this issue of trust, because you're right. It takes years to build it, a nanosecond for it to evaporate, and to have to then be rebuilt. So how do you see the lesson for the water community?
I think leadership is very important, and I think that, again, looking back on the events that affected LA, DWP, MWD, the leaders there had, certainly acknowledged that, that there needed to be something done. And in fact, I visited last year, MWD was installing some huge pipelines in the Riverside County area in order to ensure that if there was a large earthquake on the San Jacinto Fault, that these pipelines would not rupture and that there would be continuation of water. And I think the fact that, leaders like Marty Adams and others who have gone through these sorts of events, I think have really demonstrated that they're looking forward. They acknowledge that that these are serious risks, but they're doing something about it to ensure serviceability, after these sort of events. And I think that's very important.
Supervisor, again, having lived in the hyper-partisan and now back in the local government and in between, building community trust.
Well, I think it's important, especially utilize your electeds too. Utilize your electeds. They're the ones who have the most contact for constituency, to get them on board the vision. And I think vision's very important. If you're selling redundancy, if you're selling expansion, not only do you need to get the electeds on board to hopefully support and some resources, but when you're building those coalitions to go in with you, as you hear, that's much more successful than going in on your own. When that's other agencies or other parts that you work with, your partners are your construction folks, your residents, those type of things, to bring them all in. but bring them all together for one common vision, one or two simple messages when you're going up to either the state or the federal government to say, hey, we want your help on this. We want to be a partner with you on this. This is our ask. Here's our partners that we did. Do your work here before you go there, basically.
Councilwoman, how about you? Instilling trust, what do you look for before you'll stand up and really dig in for a constituency on some infrastructure?
Well, as I stated, my constituency, they're my bosses, so it's really showing up and being there. I have the honor of representing the Tijuana River Valley, and I actually live about 2 miles away from the River Valley, so I get to smell what my constituents are smelling, right? Which is the stench that is coming from Tijuana. I also have the honor of representing the community of South Crest that was flooded from the January 22nd floods. People completely displaced from their homes because of, in my opinion, a lack of infrastructure, a lack of stormwater infrastructure by the city of San Diego. So just really standing by them and showing up in those very difficult times and pulling out wet clothes from their homes and just really honestly just being there with them.
All right, Mr. Pastrella, since we know you don't sleep since you took this job, instilling trust, how do you look to help your board of supervisors and the rest of the region you're trying to collaborate with instill trust?
Well, I heard it from the elected officials, and it's so true. We have a saying in the House, we need a champion. You can't be done at the leadership absolutely matters at the level that I'm at, but of course our elected officials are the representatives of the community, and so working very closely with each elected official. I have 5 board members, as you know, 5 women. People say, how do you do that? I said, I love them all just differently. And they all have unique and dynamic constituencies that all have common and unique needs. So what we do is we get to know what those needs are. I do that by data. I collect a lot of data and bring it to the supervisors, showing them what I know about the infrastructure, what the needs are in community. We even take service requests from community and understand which communities within their districts and what they're asking for. And we have our top 4, and then I help them build an infrastructure agenda that they are happy to champion. And that has been a wonderful key to the success in LA County in addressing the needs. Remember that we have congressional members, ex-congressional members, Supervisor Veron, Secretary of Labor serving there, previous. We have some serious heavy-hitting elected officials, and they all tell the same thing. If we don't know the constituency, they won't know it. And they always say they want to focus on what the down-the-ground needs are of the community. They can't know that unless they have people who are coming in from the departments and from the CBOs and that and telling them this is what the need is, and then getting them to champion. I'm very proud of all 5 of my Board of Supervisors who really have championed major issues for LA County.
Marie, you get the last word.
Many of the things that have been said about leadership, I would add that the outcomes as well. If you're working within a community and you're going to say we're going to, impose this tax or, seek funding for a particular project, deliver on it, and show them how you've delivered. I think that was what the message of showing the successes. I think those are important. And I would just add one thing. There is a company called Edelman that does a trust report. They measure trust on an annual basis, and they release that report at Davos every year. The Chamber just did a presentation of this report this past week, so if you get the Chamber newsletter, there'll be a link to the report, and I think it would be very insightful to many of the members here today.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for being part of this conversation. We hope you have found these as interesting items to tee up the next panel. And remember that if all the formality falls down, begging, whiskey, and experience, all of these things make the difference. Thank you. We'll see you in a couple of minutes with our second panel.